Good morning, Algebra 1. This video is in response to some questions on the Radicals number 3 worksheet. We're simplifying radical expressions, mainly ones that have a coefficient out front that's not in the radicand. We're going to look at some with variables. Again, some of those variables are in the radicand and some are not. And then some of them that are a little bit more complicated. So I want to look at 13, 17, and 19. And to start with number 13, the main thing you need to know is that when there is just a number next to a radical like this means multiplication. So this is negative 3 times the square root of 72. So I'm going to simplify the square root of 72 first, and then whatever I get, I'm going to multiply that by negative 3. So it'll look a little bit like this. I think about perfect square factors of 72. One that comes to mind is 36. So I could write 36 times 2, or I might just jump to negative 3 times the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. Again, that's my product rule. The square root of 36, this right here, all this is the number 6. So now I have negative 3 times 6 times the square root of 2. And then negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. We get negative 18 times the square root of 2. There's no perfect square factors of 2. So I am done. I would encourage you to, maybe if I go just a little bit too fast, pause the video if you need to pause it to keep up. Okay, I'm going to look at number 17 next. And again, this is problem number 17. 5r squared times the square root of 32r to the fourth s to the third. Again, this is just multiplication. So I'm going to simplify the radical, and then whatever I get when I simplify the radical will multiply times 5r squared. So mainly 5r squared. I like to break this radical up into 3 different parts. We have a square root of 32. We have a square root of r to the fourth. We have a square root of s to the third. That's just your product rule. 5r squared. 32, I'm thinking 16 times 2. The square root of r to the fourth, well, that's just r squared. That's just r squared. A radical sign. The radical of r to the fourth. A radical sign, all it is raising something to the 1/2 power. That's all it means. So we can use our powers to powers rule and just multiply. 4 times 1/2 is 2. In other words, this is asking us what number times itself is r to the fourth. That number is r squared. Okay. When we have s cubed, we've got to break it up. You can't divide 3 by 2 evenly, so we have to say s squared times s. 5r squared. Again, you can show this step of using your product rule. You don't have to. Square root of 16 times the square root of 2. I still have my r squared. The square root of s squared times the square root of s. Now we can evaluate parts of these radicals. 5r squared times 4. The square root of 16 is 4. Times the square root of 2. Times r squared. The square root of s squared is just s. Times the square root of s. Now, everything is simplified, but we just have to clean up our answer a little bit. 5 times 4 is 20. Let's see. Alphabetical order. R squared times r squared is r to the fourth. We have an s, and then we write all of the things in a radical at the end. We have the square root of 2 times the square root of s, and the product rule allows us to put those back together and get the square root of 2s.